right. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, everyone's well fed. Huge shout out to Mayor Champaco and the team for there you go. All right, for giving us some uh, good stomach warmers. But I'm gonna go ahead and welcome everybody to the AG's Protect One Another Malesso Village Q&A. I know we have a lot of things we want to cover, a lot of questions that we want to ask. So I'm gonna go ahead and hand the microphone to really one of the uh, huge organizers who has helped us make this possible, Mr. Joe Ariola. Let's give him a round of applause.
Buenas and half a day. I'd like to thank every one of you. This is really nice to see the amount of people coming here. And I know that Austin mentioned it, and I think I can't mention it enough. Mayor Champaco, where are you, sir? There, okay. I want to thank him for graciously providing the place, the food. He was very, very instrumental in getting this together, coordinating with the Humatec and Inalahan village. So before we proceed, and I'm used to this as a former military, a safety brief. Okay, in the event of an incident, whatever it may be, there are two exits in this place. A large one in the back of there, and a smaller one over here. Okay, so in the event, whatever ceiling falls or whatever, please familiarize yourself with the exit, okay? Safety is paramount. So, with that, I'd like to introduce the Attorney General of Guam, Mr. Douglas Moylan.
Buenas and half a day, everybody. So I'd like to first thank Mayor Champaco for hosting us in your beautiful village of Malesso. It's been years since I've been down here. I think I was the Election Commission director when last time I was down here. Love the scenic views. The ocean is beautiful, especially today. Mayor Charfaras from Inalahan, also thank you for being here. Chargloff from Inalahan, thank you for being here. I understand that Major Anton Agan has his corrections officers recently sworn in. Thank you guys for being here. All the peace officers on Guam appreciate what you guys do to keep us safe at night. Also, the southern residents, I understand that we may have some villagers here from the villages of Yumatak, Inalahan, and Malesso as well. The outreach that we've done today is our second outreach dealing with the castle doctrine. And, you know, I started off the last one in the MTM with Mayor Paco, and I want to say that right now, and I know that we're online and broadcasting live right now. We're all people, we're all islanders, we're all neighbors, we're all family on Guam. It's a small community. And when we come to these things, I'm speaking to the choir, so to speak. I'm speaking to those people that are law-abiding citizens that want to follow the law. We know that in every community, there's that segment of people that don't follow the law, either willingly or for whatever reason they don't. That's why we have the peace officers on Guam. That's why we have the AGs, judges. And that's why we have all of you to listen to their stories and to decide whether or not a crime was committed. But I think the most important thing I want to say today is life is precious. Life is one of those things that you can't bring back. There's no do-overs. Once you've taken life, whether it was justified or not justified. With that type of opening here, I want to go into this idea that apart from the statutes that the senators are passing, like the Castle Doctrine, their recent amendment increasing it to the curtilage and defining what the curtilage is, I think there's a natural law, and our Supreme Court of the United States has recognized that there's a fundamental right to self-defense. It doesn't require our lawyers here or anyone else to tell us what self-defense is. You don't need to go to law school. You don't need training. There's an inherent right for everybody to be able to protect themselves and to protect their loved ones and to protect one another. And that is why I think it's important that we have these events to recognize that the people that will determine whether or not a person is going to be held either criminally or civilly responsible for their actions when it deals with hurting or not hurting somebody is all of you. Guam has the jury system, not only in the criminal law, but on the civil law too. You have a right to have a jury of your peers sit there and listen to everything that happened and then to make a decision. In terms of the logistics, all these criminal statutes have to be initiated by the Attorney General, which is an elected position. And I'd like to introduce at least the immediate prosecutors that we have here today. And I also want to recognize that not only does Guam doesn't have enough local prosecutors anymore, but we're bringing them from off island. So many of the people that you see in our prosecution team are literally giving their lives and their families time to be here with us to protect our community. From right to left, we have Chris Gray. I think Chris was from Kansas, right? Recently came in from Kansas. We have Grant Olan, who's the Deputy Chief Prosecutor. And Grant, you're from which state originally? Illinois. Then we also have Neil Bonavita. Neil, where are you from? Texas. As well as from the American Samoa, Dante Haratunian. I didn't want to massacre his name. From American Samoa, one of our islands in this part of the Pacific. So as well as I'd also like to thank my staff for being here. They've taken their Saturdays in order to help us make this presentation. As we do this, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make this interactive. So at any time that you guys feel that you want to ask a question, please feel free to just raise your hand. We did that in the MTM forum that we had recently. And I want to encourage that because this is about you guys. You know, we're the ones that are administering the law, but you guys are the ones that have to live your lives in the villages, in your homes, in your neighborhoods. And by the way, it goes as far as your cars. The Castle Doctrine makes your car a place where you should have a right to feel safe. Also, recognize that this isn't just about firearms, okay? This is about any weapon that you use. The focus of the law is a right to self-defense and the right to use deadly force. And there's a presumption that if in certain areas that you're threatened, you have a right to use deadly force, okay? Whether you're using a machete, a knife, a bow and arrow, you know, anything that causes the potential injury or death to another person, that is what the Castle Doctrine speaks to. To cut to the chase, from our last event that we had, there's two things I think that I want to put to the top of the analysis here as we start doing the deep dive into the statutes. Number one is, whenever you're confronted with a situation, always try to think, when is the last moment can I use deadly force? If you do that, and you are of a sense of mind given everything that's going on, like I usually talk about the 2 o'clock in the morning, you're kind of delirious, you're waking up, and you're hearing something happening in your house. But if you have the presence of mind to be able to think, I'm not going to, for instance, if you have a gun, I'm not going to immediately shoot what I'm seeing in my house, which the Castle Doctrine I think was originally designed for, but I want to figure out not to harm somebody as much as possible until they become that clear and present danger to you. Because if you use that type of rule, you're probably going to be able to get through our AG's office analysis when the police come there and do the police report and then send it up to our office so that we don't charge you. And if, worst case scenario, that you're put in front of a jury, which is all of you, that you guys would clear that muster in terms of what is reasonable, okay? It's the idea that a person comes through your window in the middle of the night, you've got a .357 Magnum, and you can just shoot him right on the point that he drops into your house. Do you want to do that? And that's why I said life is precious. We don't have murderers in this room right now. We have people that just want to protect themselves, their family, and one another, that sort of thing. So I ask you, apart from all the legalese that we're going to be talking about, it comes down to a story that is going to be restated to the police officer when they come, to the prosecutors when these gentlemen start looking over the police report, and then for the Attorney General to green light it or not green light it towards a prosecution. So you literally can have somebody killed by you. The police officer would put together the report, what they're seeing, different statements, and then it would come up to the AG's office. My first group would be looking at it, and especially if it caught my attention, they would bring it to me, or they would have the sense of mind to bring it to me, and then I would sit down with them and then go over the facts on what happened. Was this a situation where the person was murdered by the homeowner, or was this a situation that the person should never have been there and was justifiably shot and maybe killed? I use the example also, the person that you may be killing may be a neighbor in your village, maybe a 16-year-old boy that wanted to go through that window to see your daughter, maybe, to see, maybe that they saw something that they wanted to take from your house. Would you want to live with that you shot the boy that might even be the guy that's cutting your grass every Saturday? That's the type of situation that the Castle Doctrine brings up. If you guys remember the George Zimmerman case where Trevin Martin, I think it was 2012, that kind of started this whole national discussion about the Castle Doctrine, stand your ground type of argument. You know, this is the type of facts that the Castle Doctrine that we're talking about here. Also, George, what's that, Zimmerman? What was his first name? Yeah, also George Zimmerman, thank you. The one where the Marine, the former Marine, was on the subway in New York and then had to, is George Zimmerman that? No, George Zimmerman is the shooting. Right. No, the one that recently killed him with the, yeah, right. Right, but that's not the Zimmerman. I'm sorry, that's not, Zimmerman, I believe, was the one that shot him in the subway. The guy that was going on the subway, he had a gun, and this is back in the 90s, I think. He shot the person, and that was a self-defense argument. Yeah. Right, and Penny is the other New York subway guy that put him in a chokehold, the Marine that put him in a chokehold, and then was brought to the jury in New York. The first thing you should see there is that their Attorney General green-lit it, their district attorney, in order for him to be charged with a crime. In this AG's office, I very much believe in self-defense. I very much believe in the right to bear arms and to protect yourself, and especially when you protect somebody else. I think that's the highest level of humanity, when somebody puts their own life in danger to protect somebody else. So, under our code, we have a statute that talks about the Castle Doctrine. It's in 9 GCA Chapter 7, Article 5. It's not only criminal, it's also civil, okay? So apart from the crime that you guys may be responding to, there's also a civil immunity that's built into the statute, that if the person that, just say you hurt them and they live, and they decide to get a lawyer and sue you for having hurt them, there's an immunity provision in our Guam law that protects you from losing your house to some guy that jumped into it in the middle of the night, that sort of thing. Suing you for money damages. When I talk about civil damages, it's money damages. The statute talks about a residence, a business, and a vehicle. You have this right to defend yourself, to not to retreat, to be able to use deadly force if the person is coming into your area. You know, like getting into your car, trying to take you from your car. If you had a weapon there and hopefully licensed properly to use that weapon, you'd have a right to hurt that person, to try to defend yourself. And you would not, it would be a defense in going into court that the judge could literally dismiss the case before the jury even saw it. One of the problems that people have is that when they're charged with a crime, often they have to defend and hire a private lawyer if they're not qualified to have a public defender represent them, okay? So all these things are going on when a person's charged, like that recent gentleman. Is that Zimmerman, the one that choked her? Penny, I'm sorry, Penny. That Daniel Penny case, he went through, I think, that's the most recent one that I can think of. He went through torture on having to get his lawyer, actually I think he had 2 lawyers, and defend himself in New York City. So I'm sure that the lawyers charged him a lot of money in order to defend himself, and ultimately the jury found him not guilty. Actually, the jury hung on the first main charge, which kind of shows you guys, in different areas of the world, there are different people out there that are more tolerant of criminals and less tolerant of criminals. I will say right now that I think the Chamorros, the Guamanians on Guam, are less tolerant of criminals. In the 33 years that I've been an attorney, I've seen the juries kind of go back and forth, be critical of police officers. I've seen them be critical of defendants. But now I think most of our juries are fed up with criminals on Guam, with the meth epidemic that's causing our good people to become meth addicts, to become delusional and hurt us. So our juries are finding that if there is a case, they will tend to believe the evidence that the Attorney General's office submits to them, because we have people out there that are just not tolerant. Yes, ma'am. Okay, that's a very good, see, that's the question that was brought up at the MTM. Very good question. So how do I answer that? Well, if you were on the street and the police came up to you and they found you that you had a firearm and you didn't have the proper license, both the registered firearm and then your firearms ID, they would give you a, they would arrest you, and then you would be charged, I believe it's a felony to not have that. Right, it's a felony to not have those licensing. So you would go before the jury, and the jury would decide whether or not you should be punished or found guilty of that. You're in a situation that you're in your house, your husband has the firearms ID, has the firearm permit and everything, he's not home, and then you decide to pick it up and defend yourself. And this is why I said, that is why the prosecutors, the elected attorney general, is critical for our community. In New York, they would charge you with not only probably shooting that person, but not having the firearms ID and the registration that was in your name because you weren't supposed to use it. In my attorney general's office, I would not charge you in that specific type of situation, but you would have to have been in the fact pattern that I said. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot use this as a, you give me your fact pattern and I'll guarantee you that's the way it's going to go down. You know that as the facts come out, there's often different things that affect it. Like, for instance, in your fact pattern, or the fact pattern that I kind of created from what you said, you're in the house and your husband's not there, and then the person comes in and then you shoot them because you're scared for your life. That's normally the way the Castle Doctrine protects you, but you didn't have the firearms ID. You could be charged. Technically, you would be found guilty under that charge, but it's up to the Attorney General's office to decide to charge you. If I decide not to charge you, it's scot-free. But even if I did charge you, you guys are going to nullify it. Because it's not me that's going to find you guilty. It's going to be each one of you and your neighbors that are going to listen to the facts and just shake their head and say, what did you expect her to do? You know what I mean? So that's the type of analysis that every fact pattern is different. And again, that is a on-hands type of in your villages type of fact pattern that's very important. And it can happen even in the car, that your husband has a firearms concealed weapons permit, has it in the glove compartment, he goes in to pay less, and then some meth addict jumps into your passenger or driver's seat and then tries to hurt you or tries to take your car for that matter. Pull it out. I would normally say, give him a warning shot, but he's too close. But I mean, that's the type of fact patterns that the Castle Doctrine was meant to deal with, okay? And just to jump to the front of the line here, if you guys see the guy that came into your house at 2 o'clock at night, turn around and then try to get out of the house because he saw you, you guys made eye contact, please don't shoot him. That's just one of those cases that be careful, because as the police reports come in, and of course the medias usually get this before the AG's office or at the same time the AG's office is getting it. You see that person, and again, look at the fact pattern. You see the person, they see you, and they're trying to get out of the house and run away. The Castle Doctrine has a trigger about something of the threat. And if that came to a jury like with you guys, some of you guys may feel that, and especially if it was a 16-year-old boy that was just there to see your daughter or something like that, it will become very difficult to predict what you people would do in a situation like that. And then the harm that you would do to yourselves knowing that that was that 16-year-old kid that was lawnmowing my yard and that he was a good kid. You know, those are the things that I cannot give a clear answer to, and everybody has to think about. And that's why I kind of say, try to put yourself in a situation that you had no other choice but to shoot that person. Okay? I think if you use that standard, you can you're going to be better off. I think. Right. Okay, before I let Neil, I'm going to let Neil address that, but let me step back one moment from, I'm sorry, what is your name? Okay, the gentleman to my right. What I wanted to say here is, under common law was the right of self-defense only arises when the person that is coming at you is using deadly force, okay? If a person under the common law was attacking you but had no weapons, and you had a firearm and you pulled it out when he's coming at you and you just shoot him, under common law, you would be charged with some form of homicide against that person because he didn't have any weapon and you used deadly force. They talk about non-deadly, the person does not have a weapon and you're using deadly force in order to address it. Common law, you would be found guilty of that. And even to this day, we don't have a stand your ground statute, right? Right, we don't have a stand your ground statute. So this Castle Doctrine is our first attempt to address defending yourself, that sort of thing, okay? So in your fact pattern, you're talking about somebody's taking your property, right? So I'm gonna let Neil, Neil, you wanted to address that one? Okay.
Sir, could you repeat your question? I want to make sure I'm answering the question you're asking. Well, I understood. So in the fact pattern, if you couldn't hear the fact pattern that the gentleman just described, he's talking about if you see someone come onto your property and they're stealing the mower, the lawnmower, but he's leaving. He's not coming towards, under your fact pattern, not coming towards you, not threatening you in particular. He's stolen your lawnmower. Well, then call 911, right? That's first of all, because at least under what General Moylan was speaking with regard to the Castle Doctrine, you have to be an imminent threat. That's correct. That's sure. I mean, if you confront the individual, I hope that you're not going to shoot him because he's stealing your mower. Not yet. Not yet. Right. We get into a little bit of gray area there. Yeah, when you're outside, the statute talks about curtilage.
Right, so we have, first of all, let's address, is your fact pattern in the house or it's outside, right? It's the mower. Right, so that jumps into our discussion on curtilage, okay? That is the curtilage of the house, but in order to use it, there's certain things you gotta put up, like no trespassing, and I use that example, trespassers will be shot. Under the statute, it talks about, if you didn't have a gate, right? And even if you did have a gate, you need to put up no trespassing signs in order to be protected under the Castle Doctrine, okay? As a recent amendment now includes curtilage. That's the outside of your home, usually your property line. So if you have a fence, you're supposed to put up the no trespassing. My recommendation, find those signs that say trespassers will be shot. So when you go before the judge or the jury, you can just say, I told you you're going to get shot. And that's the notice to everybody. In your fact pattern, the statute specifically says that, and this would also apply to the inside of the house. So because they've extended the house to your property outside the house, first you got to put those notices. If you don't put the notices up, you can't be shooting people in the perimeters of your house, period. Okay? The statute says a person is presumed to have held a reasonable fear of imminent peril of death or serious bodily injury to himself or herself or another when using defensive force that is intended to or likely cause death or serious bodily injury to another. That's why I don't think it would fall into, and again, remember, if you told the police officer, that guy came at me and you shot him, but he really was trying to get out with the lawnmower, you know, they're much different. So shooting them in the back or when they're taking the property out, you probably wouldn't get the protection of the Castle Doctrine. It would probably end up in the AG's office taking it in, and especially if it was a 14-year-old kid, it just wasn't, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, it would go into some sort of a homicide. Okay. And then also, and again, these, do we have copies for everybody? Do we hand them out? Okay, so you guys have the copies here. Look at page 27, and it's identified as B. The use of deadly force is not justifiable under 7.84 unless the defendant believes that such force is necessary to protect himself against death, serious bodily harm, kidnapping, rape, or sodomy compelled by force or threat. That would be the guys here, we would have to analyze it under that construction, okay? So as much as I feel for that, that's why you go back to the common law definition of using force to protect yourself. You can use deadly force if the person is using a weapon against you. You have to use non-deadly force if the person's coming to just fight you. You know, you can't just pull out the firearm and shoot him in the street. But put it before a jury and see what happens. The jury may say, hey, that's what happened with Zimmerman, right? George Zimmerman, the Trayvon Martin, when the black kid, was he 17 or 18? He had just turned 18, if anything. And then he pulled his gun out and shot him. He went through the trial, and he was found not guilty. Acquitted. Yes. Good morning. Thank you for your service.
This question is to you, just to elaborate for the folks that are here. The question is, and it's been documented and litigated at one point in time. For those that are like a female who's 100 pounds and was being attacked by a 300-pound man,
Yeah.
and used deadly force for that, can you explain to them or let them know if their actions are justified?
Okay, so you have different levels of that. The police officers, as I said, are doing the police reports. You don't got attorney general prosecutors at the site. They're taking the police report, they're getting the facts straight. So you have a 100-pound woman, and then you have a 300-pound guy coming up on her. Takes the firearm and then shoots the individual. Okay. So I got criticized for this billboard when we put it out in the public. That basically answers Officer Champaco. Officer Champaco, retired, he basically said that fact pattern. Okay? So you have a mother with the kid in the mommy van and a meth addict comes at her, and this is what the Valentine's Day murder was about. Okay? Meth addict came upon the Tai victim in that case, and she didn't have a firearm, and she was killed by the meth addict. You put the facts together on a fact pattern like that, I could probably guarantee you the jury is not, they're either going to find a mistrial where you're not going to get all 12 of them to agree, or you're going to find an acquittal, all 12 of them agreeing that she should not have been assaulted, and she had the right to pull her gun out and just shoot the guy. It all comes down to facts. When she gets put on the stand, if the guy was lucky enough to even get to survive a witness talking about what they saw, a lot of it comes down to facts. And the AG's office has to evaluate it and decide whether or not we're going to exercise the prosecutorial discretion. That's another thing, common law, the Attorney General, the District Attorney, the people that you elect to be in these positions and to be here for me and the team that I put together, we need to have the common sense of the community that you don't put that 100-pound woman through hell of having to go get a lawyer, having to stress herself out for potentially 2 years before that thing gets to trial, and then have to put her on the stand for defending herself, okay? So in that pattern, we wouldn't even charge it, okay? That's probably how it would go. We could charge it, you know, and just see what happens, but do we want to put that person through that? And by the way, we've already had that happen at least, I think 3 times in the last 2 years I've been in the AG's office, that GPD, that most recent one, that gentleman that was in the his business upstairs, and then that guy came up and dead-o on him, and then he shot and killed him, right? Yeah. So we never charged that case because it just wasn't worthy of it. When you are protecting someone else, from my perspective, you are an angel to other people. So our how'd you say, our needle on whether or not we would charge a case like that goes into not charging. The Attorney General, District Attorney can look at any case and under prosecutorial discretion can decide not to charge a case. Even if the person should have been charged and everybody in the community is angry that this person wasn't charged, the trust that you put into the Attorney General is an ultimate trust that is inherent in the position, that choosing to charge or not charge is the responsibility of the Attorney General, and the Attorney General will either suffer for it or be supported by it in the community. And that's why all your fact patterns, it really will depend upon how good the police reports are, on what actually is the facts. Yes, sir.
She's a senior citizen. She's
Yes.
asking how can she protect herself?
Okay, you know
And she's in a wheelchair too.
yeah, you know, and again, these are all the facts that come down. Obviously, we have compassion. I have compassion in the AG's office. When I see a vulnerable person that's being victimized, my needle goes onto the vulnerable person side, that sort of thing, obviously. The people that are handicapped, they have the right to own and purchase a firearm, provided that they pass all the background checks. People that have dementia should not have a firearm, you know, stuff like that. So it's usually the guardians that have to make sure that the person is mentally capable of using a weapon. And we're not even just talking a firearm, you know, whatever type of a pellet gun, you know, stuff like that. A lot of the firearms these days, they can penetrate the skin. The ones you don't need licenses for. Okay, does that answer? She has a right to obtain whatever weapon she wants so long as she qualifies. And then it's usually to have a good social network, a family network around her, to put up the cameras and to have the protection needed in her home. So, okay. Thank you. Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, so my question is, so if I have a neighbor and there's a family of 10, I have a registered firearm, I have my permit and all, I hear 3 shots already. Can I go over there and literally stop, you know, the shooter from shooting the rest of the 7 and still be protected under this Castro Doctrine law?
The first question that I would have is, where would the person be? Would they be in their own home or in somebody else's home?
Yeah, so I'm a neighbor and I'm hearing gunshots happening in the home. I know there's 10 of them. I've already heard the first shot. I've heard 10 seconds
Okay.
later the second shot.
Okay. That's a good question. Chris.
Good morning. Thank you for the question. I think the first thing that we need to clarify is the castle doctrine is a protection for you to defend yourself. It is not an excuse to hurt somebody or kill somebody. And I think that's something that we need to kind of frame that idea a little bit. When it comes to your question, sir, you're left your castle. Does that make sense? If you're no longer in your castle, however, there are self-defense possibly as an excuse to allow you to do that because it is under self-defense. You are protecting somebody else. As the general pointed out, that is kind of similar in this situation. You are an angel, but it's still dependent on all the facts. Was it, you could have heard maybe just a gunshot hearing from a TV. You don't know that as a fact. So there's other things that really needs to kind of play into that idea a little bit. And the biggest thing also with self-defense, or at least in deadly force, and this is something that needs to be clarified also, is it's not a cause of apprehension. What I mean by that is, if it comes down to the person's intent that's trying to harm you, if you believe is harming you, we have to look at that very clearly, because if they're just in their intent just to scare you and you shoot them, that doesn't fall under kind of self-defense. Does that make sense? It has to lead eminently to death or serious bodily injury. So if they pulled a gun at you or they shooting at your vehicle, that's a different action. Does that make sense? But if I'm going and say, hey, I'm going to kill you, that's completely something else. But as far as, like I said, as far as you leaving your home, that's no longer the castle doctrine. That's not your castle.
Right.
So
to build upon what Chris said, Mayor, there's actually there were two Supreme Court of Guam cases that addressed the castle doctrine. It went up on appeal on that type of issue before we passed the amendment to the curtilage as well. If you're in somebody's home, you don't have, let's put it this way, you don't have to be the homeowner to avail yourself to the castle doctrine. If you're staying there or if you're visiting the home, and that was one of the cases, you can now use the castle doctrine. Your fact pattern was interesting because you weren't invited to the house, but you're coming to help them. So what Chris was talking about, you have a right of self-defense, which is your own personal right. In the statute, in I believe it's maybe it was Title IX, one of the chapters, I think it's before that, talks about defense of others is a recognized defense. Right. So 7.88 in Title IX, it talks about defense of others. You know, as a defense attorney, I even won a case, Micronesians. The Micronesian was charged with a crime because he killed a person. That was the case. So my client had been accused by the AG's office at that time for having gone to render assistance to his friend that was being attacked. This is the defense to it, that when you protect another person like they're protecting the child, it's a complete defense. You know, they cannot find you guilty of the homicide that was committed. So if in your fact pattern, it's clear that there were shots that were fired, you go over there with your firearm, you see the person, and you shoot the person, the AG's office shouldn't charge you for that because you were defending the individual, and that's clear under the statute. It won't be under, as Chris says, it won't be under the castle doctrine, but it'll be a other defense to the law-abiding citizen. And, you know, it really comes down to I think the way that we just walked through this, I think all of you would come to the conclusion he shouldn't be put in jail for that. He shouldn't be found guilty. You know, and that's why I say I have to be careful here. I'm not saying don't listen to the judge when they give you the jury instructions at the end, but I've seen the juries when the judge says that if you find this happen, then you must find guilt. I've seen juries just shake their head, not guilty. That's the power of the jury, and the judge cannot question the jurors on that. It's within the providence of the jury, with the providence of all of you, reasonable people in our community. And you don't have to have a college degree, a high school degree. You just have to be a eligible citizen to sit on a jury, over 18, American citizen, that sort of thing. That's the wisdom of the Constitution of the United States. We're just technicians that effectuate the criminal justice system. Yes. So when you're in the jury situation, the criminal justice system, it can only start in all our jurisdictions with the executive branch, attorney general, or district attorney, or county attorney, because they don't have one attorney generals in most of the states. They break it up, attorney general, and then they have a district attorney in a capacity. The district attorney is the one that charges these criminal cases, okay? So, yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, right. You can even be a visitor, and that's one of the cases fact pattern was. The person availed themselves to the castle doctrine because they were there by invitation of the one that owned it. Yeah. So you'll have that additional protection to what's going on. Right, and the businesses, those people that have a business and then they live upstairs, let alone the business itself. If a person comes in and they're doing business and the person qualifies under that threat to themselves, and they walk in with a firearm, and basically they're saying they're going to shoot somebody. You know, there's all these facts are going on, and then you pull out the firearm and he tries to go for his firearm and you just shoot him right there. Castle doctrine. Yeah. Yes, Joe.
I got to ask this question. One of the guys in our group, his question was or is, when you and your family is at the mall with an active shooter, can you terminate or eliminate the threat?
That's a very interesting question. So you're at a mall, which is a business, you have an active shooter. Do you avail yourself to the castle doctrine? You're there by invitation of the owner, because they're inviting you to come in and to buy their products, to be there. Then you see an active shooter. By the way, that's what's going on in the States, right? You got an active shooter, and the guy that has the firearm is the only one. And by the way, to digress from that question a bit, the only way, in my opinion, that we can protect these kids in the States, you need to put firearms in that school, because the only time that those cowards come in and shoot everybody up, when they see somebody else with a gun, they run. You know, they're not the types of these brave people that have a firearm shooting everybody down. In that case, there would be a good argument for the castle doctrine, and that obviously they should not be charged under the castle doctrine, but also defense of others. That you go, you run towards the danger with the equipment you have. And remember, the firearm, the machete, the knife, these are tools. And for the guys out there, you need to know how to use your tool. You need to know what you shoot. You got to hit, and be careful, because if you miss it, you may get charged. You know, just say that you were shooting a person, but they were in a crowd, and you never got any training. You just bought the firearm the day before, and you decide to shoot, but you hit the person right next to the person. Got to be very careful about that stuff. That's why when we approach a firearm, when we approach this whole issue about hurting people, we need to be careful on, you may have a right, but whether you use that right, be careful, because you could go outside the confines of the right. Okay? Yes, sir. Yes. Right. The castle doctrine is structured around the word deadly force, okay? That fact pattern coming out before a jury and then the AG's office, and it's clear that you were using, what would be a non-deadly type weapon? You had a firearm, but I'm sorry? A taser, right. So, like a taser, I've never really heard of anyone dying from a taser, but I mean, like if you had a crossbow, and you try, well, the example I used in the MTM presentation there, when you shoot somebody, you don't need to hit them between the eyes. You don't need to hit them necessarily in the heart. You can hit them in the leg. You can hit them in the kneecap. One of the most painful injuries you can get is the kneecap. Shoot somebody in the kneecap, not only are they not going to walk right anymore, but the pain that comes from a blown kneecap is tremendous. So the person doesn't die, or the person dies.
I'm referring to like a firearms like a handgun that
Yeah.
uses rubber bullets.
Was what?
Rubber bullets.
Okay.
Okay,
Like,
and
like
then
Department of Corrections.
yeah, and then the person doesn't die then, but later on he dies from that sustained injury.
So, okay, so that's clear. That's a good example, because when you do the rubber bullets, it's like a paintball. You're knowing it shouldn't kill the person. Okay? So
That's the intent.
right. So that's a very good example you got there. So, but the question is, did you have a protection in where you were shooting them with the rubber bullet? If they're in the house and there's some form of threat to the, your safety, yeah.
So
And the person
what
dies-
about in your property?
Okay, now let's talk about the curtilage, okay? So in your property is the curtilage requirement. Okay, first of all, in the law, in the court cases, they talk about the curtilage. Like when your neighbor or a police officer wants to talk to the person in the house, they go through the gate's normally open, and they walk up to the front door, and they knock on the door, okay? And then when they're at the door, they kind of see something that's illegal. They now have reasonable support, reasonable belief that a crime is committed, and they can go, depending upon the situation, address it. What this law did was it removed that right for you to go to the front of somebody's house and knock on it. It made it questionable. And what the example from MTM's audience was, you have police reports on this guy that had threatened you, that had a whole history of trying to hurt you, and all of a sudden you see him coming to your front door, walking towards your door, right? Under the Castle Doctrine, if you have those notices posted that, no trespassing, and this comes up, there's a question whether or not the Castle Doctrine will actually protect you when you shoot that person through the door, maybe, because you're in deep fear of the person, and like a person that's in a wheelchair, and they have like a whole history of all these reports of this person threatening them to kill them and stuff like that, it's more likely the AG's office wouldn't charge it, okay? But if it was one of those like situations, it would be questionable. So the curtilage is the first thing, right? You're talking about the curtilage. You're using non-deadly force on the person dies. The question under the Castle Doctrine, was that person putting you in a reasonable position of deadly of injury? Let's put it that way, of serious bodily injury. They're coming up to your house at 12 o'clock in the daytime. You shoot them with the rubber bullet. One of you guys want to handle that?
But it being used as a deterrent, like somebody comes and vandalizes, like let's say your shed, right? Burns it or just does stupid stuff, and
Yeah.
you're using.
No, that's a good fact pattern. You can't, okay, but you see, you fall outside of the serious bodily injury. If you know the person is going and spray painting your shed or trying to take your lawnmower or something, you can't take your sniper scope out, rifle, and take them out.
No, non-lethal.
And you can't use that either.
Okay.
I think that it's going to get into that. Yeah, it would turn into a homicide type of case. Mhm. Right. Okay, well, stop right there. You did that. The guy didn't die. I probably wouldn't charge it. If you put that together with him, but you take a 357 Magnum or a 22 pistol, and you put a bullet in that guy because he was just at the side of the house taking out your tools, you can, again, if you shoot him and you shoot him in the leg, that's what I'm saying, shoot him in the leg. You're not going to get an AG wanting to prosecute you, because I get it. And I'm against the meth addicts because they're voluntarily choosing to take meth. They lose the protection of holding your hand like the governor wants to do. You got to set the tone in our community. Stop taking meth because the consequences of addiction and of becoming delusional and psychiatric in their conduct occurs. What you just said there is exactly what's going on. On 2 of the cases that we're currently prosecuting, the Korean tourist murder and the Valentine's Day murder, they were scoping out people to take money just to buy a hit, meth. The normal robbers that aren't on meth, they won't kill you because they know the consequences of killing you. They'll hit you, they'll beat you up, they'll take your money and leave you because they don't want a murder rap on them. That's a rational person. These meth addicts, they're crazy out there. They don't think right. You talk to the police officers, they're dancing in front of them. They're scratching their face. All these pullovers that you're seeing in the newspaper daily on how they're finding the meth addicts, not only are they acting like a mental case because they're delusional and they've been probably up for the last 48 hours and are still on a high or a low, but they have a firearm with them. Most every case has a firearm on these meth addicts. What are they going to use that for? They're going to use it on you. So you've got an AG's office that's very open to the fact pattern, but I think that when you're using a firearm, and especially shooting it in the organ areas where the person could die, we have to balance it, okay? I'm not a person that endorses vigilante justice, but at the same time, I get it, okay? So, yeah, it's a spectrum, guys. You got to look at the spectrum, and you got to absorb the facts, think about it. Yes, ma'am. The problem is, okay, if we want to jump to the front of the situation here, the meth addicts are the greatest offenders in the criminal justice community. Right. Okay, no, let me answer it, and that's a good question. She's getting at those guys, and I get it. That's what the police reports are showing. They're taking your cooler because you just put it in your garage, and you think that the village is safe, and somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning runs in and grabs it, and they're going to sell it for $5 so they can get a puff of meth. $10 a puff now for meth. Two things are causing the major problems on Guam right now. 2 are the categories. The repeat offenders that just want to keep on conducting their criminality, and the meth addicts. And obviously there's a combination of meth addicts and repeat offenders. Once you've got meth in their system, there's no way you're going to help those people in a way that you're going to protect the crime victims. So what is the solution? The solution is stop the flow, the massive flow of meth coming into our community. It's coming in through that Port Authority of Guam. Law enforcement knows it. They're not doing proper checks on those containers. They have a mobile x-ray machine that they're not using. Look at our website, our AG's office website. There's a 100-page report there on why we said we need to sit down with the governor, customs, the Port Authority, and get the National Guard in there because and we got the dogs, by the way. In 2023, the Opioid Council, under my proposal, got 18 or 19 dogs that were authorized, fully funded. All the money was there. Why did customs take 2 years to get only half of them? Something's going on in this government, and it's coming through that port. The guys that are bringing in the meth through their bags in the airport, that doesn't justify how low the price is and how much is out there. When you got $10 a puff, about $100 for a gram of meth now, and we're pretty sure they're not making it on Guam. It's coming, and when Jeff Pirates Cove is talking about drugs coming up on his beach a year ago, I was called on that. They're taking, and the container locks, those container seals that they put on it in Los Angeles for most of our containers, the numbers are different when they're coming here, and I've got the director of customs telling me, oh, don't worry about it, it's okay, it's just one number off. Does anybody realize that they cut the lock and then they used another lock on it? That's why the numbers are off. Department of Justice just blew it open on the Long Beach port. They had I think it was a 45-minute press conference talking about exactly what our customs director and the Port Authority is poo-pooing away. No, it's under the governor's jurisdiction without a warrant or some situation where we need the evidence to do it. Look at that 100-page report. There's somebody in the port that's actually documented those 6 cement trucks where they had that big gorilla bear in the front chair of that cement trucks, and it sat there for 6 days, and all the cameras were off around it. Customs, you can't bring anything in a vehicle without, everything's got to be taken out of it. What was that bear doing in that cement truck? I'm sorry? Right. Right. We can't grow meth on Guam. It has to be synthetically manufactured. So either they got to get the materials into Guam to have a meth house here and make it. And I can tell you right now, a lot of the villagers like yourselves, you're turning in the meth houses because, you know, they're up at every hour. They're blasting their music at 2 o'clock in the morning because they're taking meth and they can't go to sleep. They're constantly in a hyper mode. And then you see all the nefarious cars in their area and the people going in and out of it. The cops are doing that. They're targeting those places. They're breaking them up. But if they had a meth house, I'm sure it would be quickly, people would know where the meth houses are. They're coming in from off island. Jeff's Pirates Cove was just one of the indicators. We're finding them being dumped. The container seals being cut is the first indicator. Part of it is being smuggled in through the containers and the cargo and the vehicles. The other part is they're opening them up within the fishing boat distance, maybe 2 miles out of Guam, and somebody's dumping it over the side of the cargo ships. And then they're picking them up out at the ocean. And that's why the governor, with those skiffs down south here, you can launch boats from here, your fishing boats, and nobody knows about it. They need to have conservation officers monitoring them. And I've heard rumors they're putting it at the bottom of the hulls when they come back in. So that's the type of detection. That's why the dogs were so important. That's the fastest way to detect it in those containers. And then if the customs is complaining, oh, we don't have enough officers, bring the National Guard in. Monitor the oceans. Those boats that are coming out quietly and coming back in, the National Guard and the Coast Guard, they have the radars. All those white, beautiful domes all around us, they know exactly what's around Guam, coming in and going out. The governor needs to do more. So, yes.
Yeah. Hopefully, now
Hopefully.
keep on hearing you say, shoot them on the knee, shoot them in the leg.
Yeah.
Anyone, actually, for me, that's fine, you know, for other people. But if you're threatening my life, I'm not going to make you walk. I'm going to shoot at the body mass, you know. So,
Well, the threat is important,
right,
right?
of
So
course,
he's
I
threatening
understand. You mentioned shoot them in the knee, shoot them in the leg. What if there's thieves have done this so many times at a particular home? And it's been happening here in the South, all over the island. And you mentioned why meth, right?
Yeah.
They need to get their fix. And they've stolen at a particular house numerous times. And yet, by the time they see this person is taken off already, you know?
Right.
Well,
Okay,
then,
that's a good
and
point.
here, if I can finish, the guy shoots him on the leg, you know, just to cripple the guy and slow him down or what have you. But then later on, he gets charged for the crime. Oh, police officer comes, or maybe in the police report, sir, did he threaten you? Did he approach you? Did he threaten you? Did he point a weapon at you? And so, no, he didn't, but he ran away, stealing my stuff. Sir, no, that it has to be, you know, I'm pretty sure you get where I'm coming from.
But that's why I say shoot him in the leg. If you're a good shot on it and he's running away from you, and you shoot him in the leg, knowing that he's not going to die, then sit on him until the cop comes. You know, I can't say that. As much as I hear where you're coming from, I can't say that he's running away and you shoot him in the back.
No, and you
know?
mentioned neighbors, right? Approaching you, you argue with your neighbors.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm pretty sure this incident happened once regarding a fire.
Yeah.
Where the neighbors constantly burning smoke,
Yeah.
right?
Get it.
And a
coming
number
in.
of times, the guy's been reporting it to 911. Fire department comes out here.
Right.
And there's a process and there's a procedure.
Right.
And of course, initially, maybe I can give you a warning, sir. We're going to have to put out your fire. Do not do this again. We'll write you out, give you a verbal, maybe a written warning. Second time around, third time around, we're going to issue you a fine. And it
Right.
starts with $100 all the way up and
Right.
keeps on climbing, depending on the number of times. But that guy over there suffering, after 6 times, 7 times, he's inhaling all the smoke, the toxicity from the plastics, foams, and all that. He's fed up. And I think that guy, right, took it justice in his own
Yeah.
hands, right, and killed the guy. So, how many times do we have to report it? How many times does a report has to be made where now the attorney general, maybe after the third time, maybe say, oh, I need to take a look at this right away.
Yeah.
And to prevent that from
Right.
happening.
No, I like what you're saying in terms of the fact pattern, but you're not saying you can shoot them because of them continuing to, break the law in terms of the fire, the burning, right? See, we always got, under the statute, we always got to look at the deadly. It was a threat to you. It was a rational type of threat to you. So just because he keeps on burning his trash and it's going into your yard, that won't be the fact pattern that we would need under the Castle Doctrine. And the curtilage, like this idea that he's now in your yard. You'd need something more than that, like a police report that says that he came up to your house, threatened your life, that he was going to kill you or hurt you if you didn't stop looking his way, something like that. Yeah. Right, but I mean that it's you really have to put that case together on that versus the person who's coming in at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and is just walking into your area that has all the notices up. You can't just shoot them because the statute says that it has to be a threat to your bodily injury, threat of bodily injury to you. So if he's walking up with his machete, that's a better case to show that he was there to hurt you because you had 5 police reports or 3 police reports where the guy said he was going to come and hurt you. Yeah, that would be more, we could probably catch it at the AG's office and the jury would ultimately have to hear it if we had to charge it. So, yeah, it's good fact patterns. He's like the guy, the farmer. You're like the farmer that gave that example that they were coming on his property and taking his farm products and stuff, his vegetables and things. It had to have a little bit more leading up to the danger of the safety. Yeah. Right. But you're doing that non-deadly situation and non-life-threatening and jumping it to life-threatening and deadly. I see that. I understand what you're saying, sir. There's got to be some level of, I do know what you're saying. Right. But you see, when you say protect your property, that's where it gets into that using non-lethal force, and then you have your story to tell. You tell the story to the police officer, we get the story, we kind of evaluate it. That's why I say, and I'm on the ledge, by the way, guys, when you have your person having stolen your stuff and is running from your house, usually you're not supposed to be able to shoot them. And even if it's in the leg, you're not supposed to be able to do that. But if that came into the AG's office, we'd look at it very carefully on whether or not, especially if the guy was found with a bag of meth. I agree. I agree. Right. Deterrence. Yeah. Right. Mhm. Yeah. Well, where we're going with what you just said, sir, is that the AG's office. Not only do we have the anti-crime bill with our oversight chairwoman, Tela Taitigui, But the trend right now is to take the discretion away from the judges. You know, for example, you find somebody with meth, it's 0 to 3, right? Third degree felony, right? So first time offender, you've got 0. A lot of the judges are doing 0. When I first came in, a lot of them were doing 0. Are they starting to give anything now for possession? Yeah, you see, this is where there's got to be the minimum requirement that you're talking about. So a judge cannot be lenient on these people. It's not about hurting people and punishing them and putting them at DOC, guys. It's about keeping the criminals away from us. Put them at DOC, build a bigger prison. Guam needs bigger prisons now. Because of meth, we need to now build a bigger prison, because literally every weekend we're creating a meth addict. With the price of meth that's out there, you can buy a 6-pack of beer, or you can get 6 tokes hit on meth. That's enough to get you addicted. Once you're addicted, it's a lifelong process. Either they're going to end up dead because they've meth overdosed, or they're going to end up in and out of taxpayer-paid facilities, whether it's Department of Corrections or public health or mental health, because these guys can't keep a job anymore. You give them a little depression in their life, they're back on meth. It's like alcohol. You know, everybody knows the whole fight with substances. Yes, sir.
Yeah, about keeping the people away from stealing your products at home, right?
Yeah.
One of my friends has a good solution. How about a gun?
What? Pellet gun? Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
But don't put bullets. So when they hear noise on the outside, every time they just pump it and then
Yeah.
they shoot in the air.
But
Shoot in the air. So it scares them. And up to this day, he was never been robbed or being, because there's an active, some things going on even at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when the dog barks.
well,
they go out and they
that's
just
a very good suggestion.
so no one gets hurt both ways, but you're keeping them away consistently. They're gonna come back, but I hope they don't hear that again. That it's a
But I
bad
might
bullet.
even put a 22 in there and then just shoot him in the leg with a pellet gun. But I mean, it's this idea that how much money do we have to spend to make our homes like a security, like the prison? How many cameras do we have to buy? How many dogs do we have to buy? And by the way, I think the dogs are the best, most effective way to deal with a lot of prowlers. They're very intuitive, they're sensitive, and once they bark, usually they run off. But I mean, we're building castles literally against our neighbors and anyone other than our family. And that's the problem that Guam is facing. And that's why meth and repeat offenders, they need to stay at DOC. The only problem with meth addicts, it's just so many meth addicts that we're gonna have to build a bigger prison. Yes, sir.
I would like to ask a question to clarify curtilage, the way you were defining it.
Okay.
So when I first bought my house here in Malesso, I actually did research and read the laws, and I posted no trespassing signs around the sides and back property.
Yes.
I did not put it out front because I want my neighbors to come to my front door and knock. I want FedEx, DHL to deliver packages.
No, it has to be in the front. There's no exception. If you want to use the castle doctrine, it has to be what people would do normally. You build the fence, you have the mail postal thing, or you have the doorbell, or the a chime type of thing. And I did look at that. There's no exception. So they're not even supposed to come through the curtilage, walk up to your front door. Once they do that, they take their life in their own hands.
So my question then is, how could I have both?
The way the
There's
statute is
no-
worded, you see, this is why I did not testify in support of this, although the media said I supported the curtilage change. It was problematic on exactly what you're talking about. On the one hand, you want them to come in and put the mail, knock the door, give the stuff. On the
I
other
do. I
hand,
like my neighbors. I want them to come visit. me.
right,
Yeah.
right. But I mean, you're trying to protect yourselves from some outside forces, and that's why the either the
So then-
dog or
If there is an unwanted person at the door, how do I compel them to leave?
usually,
Can I
usually you
trespass
tell
them
them.
on the spot?
Huh?
Can I trespass them on the spot verbally?
No, you can't.
No?
Once you don't put up those signs, you can't treat the curtilage as your part of your house.
Okay.
It would go to the normal default. Please leave. If they don't leave, and then they start threatening you in the front. By the way, there was a Fox News about 2 years ago. There was exactly a situation like that. That the person was meth addict, was at the house, kept on hammering the door. I think he was trying to see his girlfriend, and then they had to shoot him. but it showed in the camera how crazy he was. So that goes to regular self-defense. You just have to use what self-defense provides. You're welcome.
AG, so I get your premise of meth addicts bad, everybody else good. The danger is we all know, most of us here, of a victim of meth that has recovered. I personally know of someone in my family. So I kind of take offense that we are categorizing them and demonizing all of them, because we should not. We have to be careful.
Right.
And I'm going to come up with my question too, I
Sure.
promise you. So my question is, if a lot of the feedback you're getting right now is theft of property, what do we do? And who do we go to if you don't have a solution? What's
Okay.
the best way to attack theft of property that we're all concerned about?
Very good. So number one, I've had 3 of my family members die of meth, my mom's side and my dad's side. I'm 58 years old. I've been an attorney for 33 years. I was educated by this population, went to law school on a scholarship, Protect scholarship. I'm part of this island. Never in my memory has there been as much crime as we're having now. Since I've been in and since I've been a defense attorney, and I've dealt with the meth addicts because they've been my clients, I think 5 of them died, 4 of them by meth, 1 of them just shot himself. What do you do when the Attorney General's job is to protect the victims, you people? That's why I say you guys are a charged group. You're the law-abiding citizens in the community. What do you do when you see the statistics? Adult drug court. Demand from the judiciary, where are the recidivism rates? How many people are they graduating that are actually succeeding 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out? In the end of 2023, 2024, those 2 examples, that nuclear physicist Korean gentleman that was sent to Guam by his family on a vacation, a retirement vacation, that we killed, that woman that was killed, the Tai murder. The meth addicts are going from nonviolent, I just want to get some money to help my addiction, to killers. They're jumping. Those 2 cases, when it happened, I had my staff pull the files, and I personally went through both of them to understand who were these people that were killing our people. Do you remember what that Korean tourist murderer did when the cops came upon him? He took the gun and shot himself. He was one of us. He was a villager, Chamorro, villager, a person we may have gone to school with in the churches. The addiction to meth is creating this triage situation. You either lock them up and separate them from us, or you give them a chance and they're going to end up killing somebody. One was an off-island person, nuclear physicist from Korea. We killed one of their highest, best people that ran their nuclear program over there, and he went back in a coffin. And I still remember the hours after. He lived for maybe 7 hours. The governor was calling me to make sure we didn't cut the body open because the wife or the daughters wanted to come here. That's the type of intensity of these people that are killing our people. He shot himself not because he was a bad person, and I agree, these are not bad people, but because they voluntarily take the drug, he killed himself because he was guilty. There's no explanation of why he would have shot himself. The cops had surrounded his car. I think it was his girlfriend that turned him in, that was the one, because it took like a week to find the guy. And instead of going, hey, you got me, just take me to the courts, he shot himself. And when I looked at the file, he was adult drug court 1, about ready to go into adult drug court 1. He didn't have a litany of all crimes. He was a normal person. But what he did was he game over. There's no way to do a do-over once they kill somebody. So as a law enforcer, my job is you break the law, my team sees you break the law, the legislature says you're either going to give that chance for adult drug court, that one chance you get to graduate when most of them aren't, or you go and go to prison. Because it's not a punishment. That's why I said it's not about punishing these people. It's about saving all of you. You guys are here doing exactly what I'm doing in Dededo. I'm thinking about getting a dog because I'm sick and tired of listening to the cats set off my security system. You know, that's how we're living in, we're pulling back and becoming hermits in our homes because once the sun goes down, we're having to defend ourselves. Literally. We got more meth addicts up there than you guys have down here. I think I've even got them on my video. They jump in at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, run around, try to grab what they can, and they jump out. And that's gated. So, you know, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm not trying to single it out or something, but I ran in 2022, toughest AG on crime. I'm not here to hold the meth addicts, but who is here to try to save those meth addicts is the cabinet members, public health, mental health, nonprofit organizations, but look at what they're doing. They're not fixing it. That's why when our team, and these are the guys, by the way, that put that 100-page report out, Grant Olan, looking at the grant money that we could get the x-ray machine, even though the port's getting millions of dollars excess all the time, to buy that $900,000 x-ray machine so they can drive those containers through it and they can see what's in that container, in the back of the container, hidden in things. They're not doing it. So whose fault is it? We're doing our job. We are staying in our lane. I'm not the master social worker. I am the chief law enforcement officer with the peace officers at Department of Corrections. We're dealing with triage. But that's a defensive game. One meth addict at a time, they're going to swamp the boat, and they are swamping the boat. There's too many meth addicts. Those are the people you guys are coming here to know whether to shoot them or not. Those are the people that are out there. It's the meth addicts. Or play an offensive game. The offense in a basketball game is to go after the criminals where they're being created. And they're being created because of that Port Authority and because the governor needs to activate the National Guard, put the customs officers, start changing those customs officers. There's something going on with those customs officers. Why those containers? Look at what's going on right now. You got the Department of Corrections had that incident with the Rosalind, known to have been involved in meth, admitted to it, is now in the port. What the hell is that? That port is a crime scene, in my opinion, right now. And it requires the governor to take hold of her cabinet. She appoints all those board members at the port, even though they're autonomous. And she controls the customs officers. You drive the price of meth up by keeping the quantity so they can't massively bring it in like they're doing it. And you're going to get less meth addicts, people that are down in the times. Behavioral science shows that education, lack of education, and hard times, which the poverty brings, causes people to take alcohol. You know, they find things to deaden their feelings, right? Let alone being regular people and drinking and stuff. You address those issues by reducing the amount of meth coming in, drive the price up. What's going to happen, you put a lockdown on those containers, price is going to go up. Price goes up, you're not going to get as many people looking at meth to be their first option. They're going to turn to alcohol like they've always done. It's much easier to deal with alcoholics, obviously, or anybody. Cocaine, easier to deal with a person on cocaine than it is meth. Meth was designed synthetically to be the most addictive drug to the human body. It was specifically. I don't have control. I can't tell them what to do. Right. Anti-crime bill. We just put it into the one that is sitting on Senator Titlegui's desk. I heard she's going to try to introduce it next week. Talk to the senators. Tell them that pass that bill because that's what we're seeing. There's 10 provisions in it. And the 10th one is require that all container and cargo be inspected at the port. The governor's excuse, 3 to 4 hours. It doesn't take 3 to 4 hours. You get an x-ray machine, they put it on that trailer, they run it through there. That's the first indicator. Yeah. And you see, that's why in that bill, the Attorney General selects the one who oversees it. That's how you root it out, because he said exactly right. I don't trust the port management. I don't trust the customs director. He's turned his eye too many times. His job is like my job, to protect you out there. When we let meth addicts come in, they're hurting us. So what do? And they're killing us now. That's why I've dug deeper. We just can't build a bigger prison. Build that Butler building over at the prison if they're overcrowded. They've got a lot of property there. Butler building, 6 months, you can put up a Butler building like this. This is a Butler building. Literally build this, put the sheets of metal up, and put the guards. That's where they sleep. In the daytime, they got a lot of property out there. Let them go mow the yard, paint those buildings, go out to the mayors, get them working, put them on chains. You know, oh, it's so inhumane. It's the part of the United States. When you have those guys, all those prisoners on a chain, and some guy with a shotgun warning them, if you try to run for it, we're going to put a bullet in you. It's very, very persuasive. Plus, we get used to them. When they're sitting in that DOC, hot, and they're complaining about air. When they did the walkthrough, they made me do the walkthrough. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, what are you guys doing in here? You had empty cells over there with the air condition. Move them over there. There's ways to do that, but that's different than dealing with the prison. You need a prison to teach everybody, like was comment over here. Make them suffer and then change behaviors. Problem with meth addicts, you're holding their hand. They chose to take meth. You must suffer the consequence of it. Don't do it again. The problem also with meth addicts is, like with alcohol and every other substance, you fix them now. And by the way, when I was running in 2022, the guy was like 70 years old, meth addict. He came up to me and he said, Mr. Moylan, I know you're really tough on this, but I'm just going to tell you, when I was in my 20s, I was struggling with, I think it was heroin back then. I got over it. In my 30s, I got married, I got divorced, I got depressed, I went back on it. Another 5 years of his life was in drugs again. Then he went through it again, and he was in that part of his life, and he said that addiction is a lifelong struggle. And that is the problem with meth. It's not alcohol, it's not cocaine, it's not the other drugs, the natural drugs that we've known in our history. It was specifically designed to create addiction and not to let you go. And then you slowly start to die. Your teeth start falling out. Meth kills. You guys saw the billboard? It's part of our campaign. Be smart, don't start. We're going every month, every other week to the schools, teaching the kids, not that you're going to go to prison, that you're going to die. The high school, the middle school, you will die. Girls, you're going to lose your teeth. That's the first thing that happens with meth. You lose your teeth. And even when they put the implants, I represent a dentist. It doesn't last because your jaw is beginning to fall apart because meth is destroying the tissues in your body. And your heart eventually is going to give in because of that meth. But that's the type of fight we're having in our community right now. There's no way to, we're not seeing it like the States is. And that's where you get the labs too, by the way. Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you explain or legally interpret self-defense in the protection of life and property?
Okay.
And also another question, or go ahead and answer that question first.
It kind of goes a little bit back in what I was saying earlier, the common law, but I'll let Grant, do you want to, if you, I can do it. Okay. I'll fill in if I need. Yeah. So your question is define a protection of property and protection of life?
Self-defense in the protection of life and property.
Okay. Self-defense by definition doesn't mean protection of property. Okay? Self-defense is literally the defense of your safety, your own safety, and it can even be somebody you don't know, like the guy running into the mall to try to save somebody. So when you talk self-defense, that's only protection of yourself, and you have special protections for that. Self-defense in terms of nonviolent force being used against you, we talked about that. If you're not in the castle, in your home, in your car, in your business, you're just like on the street and something happens. Self-defense, person's coming at you, like former high school guy that used to fight you all the time, he's trying to fight you again, come up to you in the village, right? You do not have the right to pull out to use deadly force in order to stop non-deadly attack. If you know he's just coming at you with his fists, you have to make the attempt to try to push him off. You use that 100-pound woman and the 300-pound. To me, it was justified. So there's exceptions to it, and there's a practical side to it, whether or not the jury would find you guilty, right? That would be the ultimate test.
So you can't use deadly force to protect your property.
You and me, okay? You come and you shifted gear there, by the way. When you said protect your property, that's a different analysis, okay? So if you're saying that, for instance, some guy's trying to steal your car. You come out of the mall and you see somebody in the car trying to steal it.
Stealing your car at your house.
So again, you're going to the curtilage. So if it's at your house, that's different, okay? But that goes to the lawnmower example, okay? Lawnmower, car. Person's trying to steal your car, and by the way, I've seen the police reports. They take the wheels off of it, they steal it. My neighbor, Dedito, literally, they took, and I don't want to teach anybody anything, but the battery power tools they have these days, it's like a walking, what is it, one of those chop shops. They cut the lock off her gate, opened her gate at 2 o'clock in the morning. The husband had the key somewhere around, got the key, stole his car from his gate, and it was a new Toyota.
So you can't use lethal force.
You can't, well, no, you can't use lethal force, but if you want to take a shot at the person and hit them in a non-deadly area, and hopefully the person survives, like call the police right after you shoot him so the ambulance can get there to treat him. Don't keep him in your house for a day so he bleeds out. You know, stuff like that. That's the idea,
Yeah,
the facts.
but that comes to my next question. In order to get a firearms license, you have to be trained.
You have to be what?
You have to be trained, right? In the use of.
Don't even get me started there. I think they have the law is unconstitutional when it comes to a concealed firearm permit. You only need to get trained for the non-concealed. I'm sorry, the concealed. To get the training, the certification they're talking about, it's for the concealed permit. For the unconcealed permit, you don't need to.
So you don't have to be trained.
Right. You can just walk in and they do it pretty quick.
Okay, for the concealed.
Right.
So you have to be trained in order to get that.
Right.
And I don't know about other people, but I've never been trained to shoot someone in the leg.
Right.
Or the
See?
arm.
Yeah, but you're
It's
trained.
always center mass.
Right. Well.
It's always center mass.
That's how they certify you. What it's doing is that you can hit the target. So if your target is the leg, you should be able to hit the leg too. You know.
I never had a target that had a leg.
Well.
Wait, stop.
Where's our target? Did it all fall? You guys got a lot of wind down here. We had the targets over there. The idea of a target is that you can hit that bullseye. It's not that you hit the center mass when you shoot at somebody. You know what I mean? It's like you're a marksman and you can hit that. What was that? Yeah, no. But I'm saying when you shoot that target, you're good when you can hit the center mass target. That's the bullseye, right? It's just teaching you that you're certified so you know how to aim your gun. But if you aim your gun at the leg, then you should be good to go to hit the leg, right?
That's still hitting the target.
And not hit the head.
So I have a follow-up question to that, actually, a very specific follow-up question, because I'm very fortunate to have really good neighbors that look after us. So there's always the chat that tells us when something's happening. So what I often find myself in is I always hear there's a robbery a couple houses down, and to be careful, lock your doors. And there's suspicious people walking behind the house. So I guess, and I have a young son, so I know to be responsible. I understand the imminent threat. I think my question is now is, if I see that person, potential trespasser, trying to get into my property, shaking my gate, trying to get that gate open, and they're still outside of my property, but I have a young son who I've kept in the room, I have a license to carry, I have a properly registered firearm.
Right.
Where does that leave me?
That's a good fact pattern. Number one, since you have the gate, I would put the no trespassing signs up.
I have that.
Okay, you have that. The person is outside the curtilage.
Is outside trying to get in.
Right. So, but it's outside the curtilage.
Correct.
So under this statute, it doesn't provide for it. Okay. But under your fact pattern, if that's at 2 o'clock, you see, this is why when I opened up, I'm saying you need to get it so it's a position that you're immediate threat, right? Try not to shoot the person in a deadly way until it's an immediate threat. So the person is trying to get in.
They have a machete.
Right. Okay. They're ready to, once they get through that gate, they're ready to get you, right? So sometimes, shooting up in the air, obviously calling the police while you're doing it. If you have the luxury of time, and I get it, 2 o'clock in the morning, you're seeing this, your brain isn't thinking, pick up the phone, you're just trying to you're freaking out, right? As most people would normally do. If you shot that person outside your gate, and that's why I say shoot him in the leg, so he goes down, he's going to be limping back, blood all over the place, stuff like that. Cops are coming, and higher likelihood they're going to get caught, right? Our office, and if you had a fact pattern that supported it, Like this was the guy that just robbed the house two days ago, and he's still on the loose. I don't think any of my prosecutors, if at minimum, they're going to come to me and say, should we charge this person or not? For two reasons. Number one, is I think that's a reasonable thing to do, but you're getting me to talk about shooting people in the public. So, it's a reasonable thing to do in your fact pattern. I think it might come down to that, especially if it's at night and those are the facts. Plus, if that's the person that did that over there.
I hope
So-
to never have to shoot my gun
Right.
to protect
Right,
my home.
but that's why it would be a harder fact pattern if you hit them in the head or in the heart where you actually died.
Okay.
That's why we can't control that. You hit anyone in the center mass, there's a higher likelihood they're going to bleed out or die because of it. You shoot them in the leg, there's a higher likelihood that not only are they going to run or try to run, hobble, but they're going to fall at some point. The cops are going to have enough time to subdue them. So that's...
So I run this other scenario through my head a lot. So if it's in the middle of the night, I
Right.
know I see in the cameras that there's already, the dogs are making noise. Now the dogs aren't making noise. I hear glass breaking.
Yeah.
I know they're in the home. I'm in my room and I'm yelling, I have a gun, get out. And I'm scared and they start shaking the door and I just shoot through that door.
Yeah, that's that seems to qualify under the curtilage. You had
Okay.
the notices in the front. It's in the middle of the night or at night, and the person is juggling the door, trying to open it. Yeah, just shoot right through the door. Got to have a big caliber though to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You shoot the aggressor in the leg, for instance, but that doesn't stop the attack or that imminent threat.
Like
What
if they're
do you
on
do
meth,
then?
meth addicts, you shoot a meth addict. The Germans used they're the ones that created methamphetamine in the 30s. The Germans created the methamphetamine. And why did they create it? For their soldiers, to create the super soldier. So we know that meth addicts, not only are they up like for 48 hours, but they're stronger. So what you're saying is exactly the situation that could happen. So continue. You said you shoot in the leg,
Yeah, so
person keeps coming.
Yeah, this person keeps coming. Are you able to shoot that person again until the threat is eliminated?
But this is assuming that there was a threat initially,
Yeah,
right?
assuming there's a
I would
threat
say it would be, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, second question, if that situation, I guess, does play out, right? Will that person who enacted the Castle Doctrine, right? Would they be automatically like spend a night in jail as detectives or the AG determines whether or not to prosecute the case or prosecute them? Because you have to establish, right, those Castle Doctrine fact patterns first. So would a person who enacts it face any, I guess, being held or jail
You're talking
time?
about the homeowner.
The homeowner,
Okay,
yes.
See, that's why the Castle Doctrine, if you look at the copies here, they have special protections for the homeowner so they don't stay in jail. Okay, but that goes back also to what our Guam Police Department did just recently when they had a business owner that actually killed somebody. They didn't take them in and to arrest them because it takes 48 hours for our office to review and to charge a person, otherwise they get released. But even GPD, when they're seeing these home situations, they don't need to arrest you just because there's a dead body, okay? And that's why when they take all these reports, they get everybody's statements, and then eventually, and they even call up the AG's office for advice. You know, and I vet a lot of it because it's what would the jury do at the end of the day if all these facts were put together? And it's usually, so that wouldn't, normally that wouldn't happen, but when they arrest somebody, that's usually within a day that our office is able to take a look at the report, and then we just call it in, release, don't charge, we don't charge. Yes?
Sir, this is more of an informational rather than a question. In regards to your firearms permit, if you are a veteran, then you can take your DD-214 to GPD over at ITC, and that qualifies you to have a
Certification?
CCW.
Thank you. So you don't have to take the certification? Get
The
certification.
DD-214 actually shows all your qualifications, your safety training, and the number of weapons that you have. used in the military.
But does it get it past the certification? 'Cause
Yes,
you-
that is your certification.
Okay.
That is acceptable.
Excellent.
That's a federal
So
document.
see, that's a good, for
The other ones,
veterans.
if you do not have a DD 214, then first you must apply for an open carry. You need to take the course, a safety course. Once you take that safety course and you pass, then you can apply for your CCW, concealed carry weapon.
Right.
But you cannot touch a firearm until at least you get that first permit.
Right. But you see, and this is a bigger discussion for those Second Amendment lovers out there. I personally believe, and I've got my staff looking at it, that the requirement that you have no certification for a non-concealed weapon, but you need a certification for a concealed weapon. Why? The Constitution does not say that you need to be trained to own a firearm. The Constitution, our Organic Act, or actually, by the way, the Second Amendment isn't in our Organic Act. That's your constitutional right. What they've done is they've codified it in local statutes. But the Constitution, the Second Amendment, doesn't say that you need to have certifications before you have a right to bear arms. It does require some. The Supreme Court has interpreted it that the government can be aware, can kind of license it, but requiring that you hit those targets over there in order to use a firearm, I think it's unconstitutional. So we're looking at that certification requirement. And what's the difference? I have my gun in my trunk, or I have my gun on me, and I can't put it in my trunk or on me, I'm still going to shoot it. There's no correlation between why you're needing to be certified for a concealed weapon and not needing to be certified for a non-concealed firearms use. Yes, yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. No. It won't be reckless conduct at all. What I'm more worried about, where you're going with that, it's illegal to discharge a firearm within 50 yards of a residence. So it's like the whole idea when your husband has the firearm and you're going to use it because of the situation. Our office, any reasonable prosecutor wouldn't charge it, okay? Wouldn't charge the fact that you discharged it because somebody was in your yard. Like that, like you don't have the notices up. You fire that firearm up and that guy knows you have a firearm, because that's the whole reason why you fire the firearm, because he's going to get shot, right? That's why he'd run away. And then the cops come over and says the neighbor just complained that you were shooting at your house. And then the cop comes up to you and says that I shot it up because somebody was about in my yard. The cop, technically, he could give you a citation for it's a misdemeanor, I think. I think it's a misdemeanor. Yeah. But when it came to our office, when we looked at the report, we wouldn't charge it. If the AG's office, yeah, you're correct on that, because it will come back down. But I mean, if the AG's office decides to charge it, because you're a technical violation. And by the way, think of yourself sitting in the jury box. You heard that fact pattern? Would you find him guilty? They'd laugh me out of the court. You know, you guys are really the check and balance on the AG's office. You're either going to let us win the case or you're not. Yes.
So I have a question about the disparity of force. So I'm not as big, right? But let's say someone bigger, someone like 400 pounds is aggressing towards me. And during our training, we learned that in 21 feet, someone can close that distance in 3 to 5 seconds.
Right.
And let's say he's unarmed, and
Right.
I'm constantly telling him to stop.
Oh, it's the example, and I used same questions as an MTM that we had. So a person has a knife, okay? And the example is usually this. And I was in the court when they were having these types of trials. A person with a knife, deadly weapon, right? You have a gun. Person is coming at, it's usually in the officer situations when the police officer shoots a person that's like right over there, 20 feet away, shoots him when the guy pulled a knife. And then there's a question by the snowflakes out there that say, hey, he wasn't coming at you, right? That's the type where if the AG charged it, the experts come in and convince the jury that, like the woman was mentioning, you shoot him in the leg, the guy keeps coming, and he's on meth. He's on, especially if he's on meth or any drug that deadens the sensitivities. So you're saying, what if that case, what you're doing should be supported by some expert that talks about the use of the ability to subdue the assailant on you, right? Because just say you had only one shot on your gun and the person's coming at you with a knife, you know?
What I was saying is, what if he's unarmed and he keeps aggressing towards me? Even
Well,
though I'm giving him
that's
that.
it's in a totally different scenario. That what I just read off there with the knife coming at you and shooting them at a distance, that's justifiable. Okay, there's experts that talk about that. If the person is just coming at you, and you know he's a big guy like my guy here, yeah, the law would not protect you on its face.
So even though because you are disadvantaged at a
Yeah,
like,
he's gonna
as a
kick your ass,
smaller-
right? It's like you're worried he's gonna kick your ass.
Yeah.
It's just you've escalated something from a non-deadly situation to a deadly situation. But again, you got the 100-pound woman against the 300-pound guy. Those are facts matter in these cases. They're critical to whether or not you have to defend yourself or whether you just continue living your life. Okay? So yeah, if it's two guys on two guys, we get that, by the way. We do get fact patterns like that. It goes into that you killed somebody that didn't have a weapon and you had a weapon. He didn't deserve to die just because he was going to beat you up. That's why I keep on saying, shoot him in the kneecap. He will wish he was dead. You guys ever hear about kneecaps? What happens? It's really painful, and they're on crutches probably the rest of their life. So when they blow the cartilage out. So, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we're at 12 o'clock. If there's other questions, sir?
Thank you. Maybe I'll close it up for you.
I'll leave it up to the
Anyways,
audience.
we hear a lot of so far today about protecting yourselves, castle law, what you can, what you cannot do. You know, I retired from the fire department, 36 years of service. So I've seen it. I treated, transported, you know, even in the early 90s, we have the straitjacket that we actually had to use, you know, on certain patients that we can't control. So we know how it affects the family. And I know we know family members, either brothers, sisters, aunts, uncle, cousins that are affected with drugs. And you mentioned with meth, right? And so far we're lucky with as far as fentanyl in this island because it only takes 2 milligrams to kill you.
Right.
And that's equal to 10 to 15 grains of soap, you know, so that would be worse. Even touching it can kill you.
Right.
Right? And you have to have Narcan readily available. So my question is, what are the proactive steps are you taking for the island, the community, to stop the growth of individuals in this island from being affected by meth? Is it, because definitely we need education. And you have to work, I'm sorry, Mr. Attorney General, but you have to work with the government of Guam, with public health, DOC, GPD, Guam Fire.
Exactly.
And you have to work collaboratively and educate the children. I mean, if you have to go to schools, go to schools.
We're doing
If you
that,
have
sir.
to go to
We're
every
doing that.
community, every village, then do it. Because certainly someone's affected within their family, and prevent this from escalating because, we know there's meth addicts out there that don't want help. There's meth addicts out there and they have to want the help, first of all, to be helped. But there's also meth addicts out there that are too embarrassed to ask for help. You know, they're too afraid. Let me change that, not embarrassed, but too afraid to ask. You know, just like being homeless. Because I've dealt with homeless people too. You know, and a lot of them don't want to be helped. I'm sorry to tell you, because that's what I've seen a lot of.
Right.
You know, and it's up to them. They have to want that help. They have
Right.
to admit. And
Absolutely.
a lot of them don't want to go back home, and maybe it's the same thing with meth.
Right.
They don't want to go back home because there's rules to follow. So same thing with homeless. They don't want to go back to the parents' house because there's rules to follow.
Behavioral
you know.
issues.
And that's where we're lacking. And I think education is a big part where we teach our kids respect, values, and all that. Because back then, we didn't have to lock our doors, Mr. Attorney General. I remember that vividly. I am 60 years old, and our front door was open
Yes, sir.
growing up. I mean, we didn't have to worry about anyone coming in stealing.
You didn't need to have gates.
We didn't have gates.
Right.
I mean, we didn't have to worry about our chickens being stolen. I mean, technically, I've been maybe robbed 3 times at my house, you know?
Right.
They took tools, they took my livestock, and it pissed me off.
Right.
But who wouldn't be pissed off, right? So I got a license to carry and all that, but I do carry it around my house because I want to show you whoever's doing it, do not cross my territory.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you. Well said.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much. So unless anyone had any other pressing questions, yes, ma'am.
You put a couple of the scenarios together that were displayed a little earlier, explained a little earlier. Let's take the guy with the mower. Someone's stealing his mower and he's walking off of the property. And then somebody else had another scenario of taking produce.
Right, farmer.
Right, the farmer. You're suggesting that if they're going to shoot, that they shoot him in the leg. But in another scenario, you were concerned in warning people that you're escalating a situation where you're escalating the force. So
Thank you for the question. Let me just make this clear. I'm not advocating to shoot people because they're taking your lawnmower and stuff. I get it, why people want to shoot them in the the leg. I'm not talking about the body at all. I get it. It would come to our office, and we'd probably be looking very carefully at that on the fact pattern. So on that, yes, especially if it's in your home. They're robbing, they're burglarizing your house, actually taking some property and leaving. The fact pattern was they felt strongly about it. I said that if you shot him in the leg, then we'll take a look at it, especially if this person has a history too with the person in that area. But if you shoot him in the body mass or you try to kill them because they were just taking your lawnmower, the law doesn't protect that.
Okay, but wouldn't that guy be the homeowner? We're talking about theft of property versus the homeowner taking his whatever kind of firearm, pellet or non-lethal
Non-deadly,
versus lethal, and you're escalating the situation. So how is the homeowner really going to know this guy? I mean, he's taking a mower, his back is toward him.
Yeah.
How is the homeowner going to know if this guy even had a record of stealing the neighbors? I mean, you don't know that.
Well,
And
may I ask, what was your approach on it? Do we just let him go and call the cops? This is the car he left.
Exactly. It's your
Okay.
theft of property,
see-
not. He's not attacking me.
That is exactly the way the analysis goes. It's theft of property. You charge the homeowner. He would be charged because he shot at that guy, and he's going to say, "Hey, I just shot his leg.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to
think there
kill him."
needs. I mean,
Yeah. No, I
I'm
get
a
it.
pro 2A.
I get it.
You know, I support the 2A. I'm.
But that isn't
I'm an advocate of that.
But you see, Second Amendment doesn't say that. Second Amendment isn't that you took my lawnmower, I'm going to shoot you in the leg.
Exactly.
Right. Second Amendment doesn't say that. And I agree. So that's why I'm seeing the value. You are a law-abiding, by-the-book person. You got frustrated homeowners here that are saying that my house is getting hit every 6 months. By the way, that dog thing, I know people, relatives, they poisoned the dog before they hit the house. They threw the meat in that was laced with something 3 times. They killed 3 of his dogs at different parts, 2 years apart, something like that, in Tumon, one of the houses down there. My point is, by the book, you cannot shoot somebody in the leg as they're running off your property with your lawnmower. That's by the book. The fact actually happens, that guy actually shoots him in the leg, says that, I went to Doug Moylan's seminar and said I could shoot him in the leg. What I said is exactly what I said to you, but our office would be looking at it. And right now, the way I feel about it, if the guy didn't die and he will be charged with having theft of property, that guy's going into DOC with his bullet wound and at DOC.
Okay. Second follow-up on that, on another situation.
Excuse me, sir.
You're advocating shooting in the air. Well, I know you know that that's a misdemeanor. But when we're talking about someone you notice someone in your yard, and I think it was Mike that was saying, get your shotgun and pump it, and maybe they'll hear it and leave.
Right.
Well, or shoot your firearm in the air.
Uh-huh.
Well, if the guy out in your yard was looking to steal something, not threatening your life,
Right.
then you have the homeowner taking a firearm and firing a warning shot. Then you're escalating non-lethal to lethal.
No, it's not. There's no lethality about it. You didn't aim at him. You shot it up. You're
The
trying to
f-
use the
fact that you even present your firearm
no
and show someone
no no.
that is
But people do
an
that, by
act
the
of
way.
deadly force.
They do that number. They pull up their thing. They show you have a firearm. That is preventing it from occurring. That's a deterrent factor. That if you want to escalate this is what's going to happen to you, right? That's basically what it is. The shooting up in the air in your area is a good way to deal with it. It's not escalating it. It's the idea the guy's going to turn around and start running because you know the next bullet's going to be in he's going to get the next bullet. I'm sorry, that's just my interpretation of it.
Sure, but
Yeah.
let me ask you this: if you were not, that is your opinion as the sitting AG.
Right.
That may not be the opinion of the next AG.
Right.
A different attorney
Right.
general.
That's why I say the prosecutorial discretion of every attorney general is within that attorney general's view. You have the soft on crime, the woke district attorneys, attorney generals. Then you have the tough on crime, which is kind of like my brand. That I grew up with this. My grandfather was the Colt dealer and everything on Guam in the 50s and so forth. So I was trained how to use the firearms. I was trained to respect for life. This is what you hope your kids are going to be trained as, but we are all adults now in a situation with everybody's different, right? So I'm only saying what the law says, and then I'm saying if there's a reality of what's happening on Guam, and the reality is bad because it's getting worse with the meth addictions that are going on. There's also by the book, like what I said, by the book, you don't have a permit for it, and you shot somebody in the house, you killed that person, you get the protection of the castle doctrine, so you're not going to get charged with murder, but you will be charged with not having the firearms ID. That's by the book. Okay? My reality side of it, good luck getting a jury to agree with me. So why even put them through that? So I'm sorry, I kind of, somebody was asking a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. That's why at the end of the day, you guys, you know, as long as you understand what's behind, like what we're talking about here, you guys and your own sensibilities and where you want to go with this. Because remember, I started off with life is precious. I don't believe that people should be quickly killed or executed. I use the word executed. I believe that we should respect life, even if there's a meth addict, if the guy's a meth addict. But I also know that when they're in my area, we got to be careful because a shot in the leg to a meth addict, I know the studies show they're not feeling it. So they may continue with what they're doing. Yeah. Or the courts or the secured areas. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Nimitz Hill, you guys may remember there was an older gentleman, former Marine, I think. He used to have his carbine and his 45 and just walk the village. He was I don't know if any of you guys ever were in Nimitz Hill area, but he literally, that was his version of the neighborhood watch. He had his Colt 45 on the side and he had his carbine from his military days. It's a very, making a statement to everybody that comes into that village. But so yeah, you could do that. You could displayed and concealed inside. So, well, I wanted to thank all of you for taking the time out to be here today. I think Tamuning is our next one on February 12th. So I will leave it like that. And to thank Joe Ariola and our Mayor Champaco for hosting this. Thank you. And if any of you have any child support issues, I've got the child support forms on this side, and those are our crime victims unit people there. Giveaways. Thank you.